Grandma, adults are talking. Stay quiet. That's what my son-in-law said to me. At my daughter's dinner table, in front of my grandchildren, while I was the one paying for the table, the house it sat in, the car in the driveway, the insurance on that car, the daycare for those grandchildren, and 12 other things he had no idea existed. 14 transfers, $4,237 a month, 7 years. He didn't know about a single one. Let me back up for a second, because I want you to see the scene. Thursday night. Pot roast. The good plates, the ones I bought Amanda as a housewarming gift, though she told Chad they were from a clearance sale at Home Goods. Chad Pruitt sat at the head of the table, which he always did, even though the table was in my daughter's house, and the mortgage on that house came out of my checking account on the 1st of every month. He was talking about a deal. 3 trucks, sold to some construction company in Cranberry Township. From his telling, you'd think he'd brokered peace in the Middle East. His hands moved when he talked big gestures, the kind men make when they need the room to feel smaller around them. I was cutting Sophie's chicken into strips. She's 5. She doesn't like the dark meat, only the white, and it has to be in rectangles, not squares. I know this because I'm the one who figured it out, not Chad, who once handed her a drumstick and couldn't understand why she cried for 20 minutes. Max sat across from me, 8 years old. He used to climb into my lap and count coins from my change jar. "Grandma, you count everything," he'd say, and I'd kiss his head and tell him, "Because everything counts, baby." That was 4 years ago. Now Max sat with his elbows on the table, watching his father like he was studying for a test. He didn't look at me once. Chad was mid-sentence, something about quarterly projections, which is a phrase that means very little when you sell trucks at a dealership, and your grandmother-in-law covers your car loan when I said, quietly, "You might want to check your cash flow first." I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was the pot roast. Maybe it was 7 years of swallowing sentences that tasted like copper. Maybe it was watching Max not look at me. Chad stopped, turned, looked at me the way you'd look at a coat rack that suddenly spoke. "Grandma," he said, smile on his face, the kind that isn't a smile at all, it's a fence. "Adults are talking. Stay quiet." The table went silent. Sophie put down her fork. She didn't understand the words, but children understand tones the way dogs understand weather. Something had shifted. Amanda, my daughter. My Amanda stared at her plate. Her fork made a small circle in the gravy. She didn't look up. She didn't say, "Chad, that's my mother." She didn't say anything at all. And Max looked at his father, then at me, then back at his father, and nodded, like he'd just learned something useful. I put down the knife. I smiled at Chad, not a warm smile, the other kind. The kind I used to give people at the IRS right before I opened their tax files and showed them exactly how much trouble they were in. I spent 28 years as a revenue agent. I have sat across from drug dealers who laundered money through laundromats, embezzlers who hid 6 figures in their mother's name, and a man in Allegheny County who claimed his 2 dead horses as dependents. None of them, not one, ever told me to stay quiet. "Okay, Chad." 2 words. I set my napkin on the table, pushed back my chair, and walked upstairs. Nobody followed me. Nobody called after me. The pot roast conversation resumed before I reached the landing. I sat on Amanda's guest bed, the one with the quilt I made when she was pregnant with Max double wedding ring pattern. Took me 4 months. The room smelled like lavender plug-in and something stale underneath, the way guest rooms do when nobody really uses them. I took out my phone, opened the banking app. 14 recurring transfers, lined up neat as a tax return. Mortgage payment, $1,200 a month. Car insurance, $218. Daycare for Sophie, $840. Max's after-school program, $360. Car loan, $412. Utilities gap, $150. The rest scattered across medical co-pays, grocery shortfalls, and what Amanda called bridge payments, a term that means nothing except, "Mom, I need money again." $4,237. Every month, for 7 years, 2 months and 9 days. I looked at the list. I could hear Chad's voice through the floor, loud, confident, narrating his own success story. The man who provided for his family. The self-made man. He had a bumper sticker on his SUV that said exactly that. Self-made. I'd parked behind it 20 minutes ago. Self-made. With 14 lines of someone else's money, I cancelled the first transfer. The app asked, "Are you sure?" I pressed confirm. Second transfer. Confirm. Third, fourth, fifth. Each one a small, clean sound, like closing drawers. By the 8th, my hands were steady. By the 12th, my breathing was normal. By the 14th, it was done. The whole thing took less time than it took Chad to finish his sentence about quarterly projections. I put the phone down. The screen went dark. Downstairs, someone laughed Chad's laugh, the loud one, the one that fills a room so nobody else has to. He provides for his family the way a picture frame holds up a wall. Decorative, optional. And the nail does all the work. The next morning, his world started bouncing. And I don't mean bouncing back. For the record, and I always keep a record, I want to tell you how a 61-year-old woman ended up quietly holding together a life her son-in-law thought he built himself. And what happened when she let go? It started 24 years ago, with a note on a kitchen counter and a 9-year-old girl asking me if we were going to be okay. The note said, "I can't face you. I'm sorry, Dee." That was it. That was everything my husband had to say. After 11 years of marriage, a mortgage, a business that ate our savings, and a daughter who was 9 years old, and standing in the kitchen doorway in her school uniform when I came home from the IRS office that evening, and found the counter empty except for a folded piece of notebook paper. Dennis Stratton. Electrical supply business. Filed Chapter 7 on a Tuesday. Vanished on a Wednesday. Left behind a storage unit full of unsold inventory, $43,000 in debt under both our names, and a little girl who hadn't eaten dinner because Daddy said he'd make mac and cheese and Daddy wasn't there. Amanda stood in the doorway, backpack still on, shoes still on. She hadn't moved since she came home from school and found the house quiet in the wrong way. "Mom?" Her voice had a crack in it I'd never heard before. "Are we going to be okay?" I dropped my bag, pulled her in, held her so tight I could feel her ribs through the uniform shirt. "We're going to be fine," I said. "I promise." For the record, that promise cost me $356,000 over the next 24 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I raised Amanda alone. IRS by day, parent by night, bookkeeper on weekends for a dentist's office on Murray Avenue for extra cash. We didn't vacation. We didn't eat out unless it was her birthday. I drove a Civic with a tape deck until 2009. But Amanda had braces, new shoes every fall, and a college fund that I built one deposit at a time like a woman stacking bricks. She graduated, got a job in HR. I thought, we made it. The promise held. Then she met Chad Pruitt. He sold cars at a dealership in Wexford, the kind of man who shakes your hand too hard and calls everyone brother. Loud laugh, big plans. Amanda looked at him the way hungry people look at a buffet, like there was more than enough of everything. They got engaged fast. The wedding was June 2017, and when the bills started arriving, Chad's parents contributed exactly nothing. His mother sent a card. His father sent regrets. Amanda called me in April, voice tight. "Mom, we're short on the venue, and the catering, and the photographer." "How short?" $8,400. I moved money from the account I'd been building for 20 years, the one I called my in-case fund, because women who've been left once always keep an in-case. Amanda cried on the phone. "Just this once, Mom. He's getting his career started. We'll pay you back. Don't worry about it, baby." That night, I sat at my kitchen table and did something I'd done every day for 28 years at work. I made a record. I took a recipe card from the box by the toaster pale blue, the kind you buy in a 10-pack at the drugstore, and I wrote, the 14th of June, 2017, $8,400, wedding balance Just this once, Mom. I put the card in a box, the same pale blue. I didn't know that box would end up holding 173 cards. I didn't know a lot of things that June. They never paid me back. Instead, the calls kept coming. 2018. Chad's dealership had a slow quarter. Mortgage shortfall. Transfer number 2. 2019. Sophie was born beautiful girl, £7 4 ounces, and a hospital bill that Chad's insurance didn't fully cover. Transfers 3, 4, 5. 2020. COVID shut down the showroom. Chad sat home watching sports while Amanda worked remotely with a newborn on her hip. Daycare, utilities, grocery delivery, transfers 6 through 9. By 2021, the list had grown to 12. Max's school fees. Amanda's emergency root canal. HOA dues that Chad called a scam, but never contested because contesting would mean attending a meeting, and meetings didn't have a sales leaderboard. By 2024, 14 recurring transfers. Car loan. Tuition savings for the kids. A monthly patch on the house that kept springing. Leaks not my house, their house, the one I paid for. Every time, Amanda called with the same voice. The one that sounded like the 9-year-old in the doorway. And every time I wrote a card. Meanwhile, Chad's online presence grew in direct proportion to my checking account shrinking. He posted on LinkedIn the way some people pray regularly, and without evidence of results. Blessed to provide for my family. Hustle never stops. I read that one while sitting in my kitchen, phone in one hand, his car insurance auto-pay confirmation on the screen in the other. I didn't say anything. That's what women like me do. We cover the gap and call it love. But the gap was getting expensive. I cancelled a trip to Savannah with Hattie. She'd been planning it for months. Something came up, I told her. What came up was Amanda's furnace. I was still driving the 2009 Civic, which now had 192,000 miles, and a passenger window that didn't roll down all the way. My row house needed a new roof. I got a quote, 11,000. I put it in a drawer. Amanda needed daycare money that month. For the record, a retired GS-13 federal employee with a FERS pension and a TSP account can live comfortably in Pittsburgh. Or she can fund a second household and eat canned soup 3 nights a week. She cannot do both. Max was 4 when he used to sit on my lap and count coins from my change jar. Quarters were his favourite because they were the biggest. He'd stack them in towers, and when the towers fell, he'd laugh and start over. Grandma, you count everything. And I'd say, because everything counts, baby. He was 8 now. He didn't count coins with me anymore. Last Sunday dinner at Amanda's, he sat across from me and said, without looking up from his plate, Grandma, Dad says you don't understand business stuff. The fork in my hand didn't move. I looked at Amanda. She was already studying her green beans like they contained the secrets of the universe. My grandson had learned a new lesson. Not from me. That same week, Hattie came by. She saw the bucket in my hallway, the one catching drips from the ceiling I couldn't afford to fix. She looked at it. She looked at me. Hattie Novak spent 26 years at the IRS, same office, 2 desks over. She doesn't miss things. How long has this been going on? She asked. She didn't mean the roof. I shrugged. Bev. She sat down at my table, pushed the bucket aside with her foot. You taught me to follow the money. Follow yours. Because right now, it's leaving, and it's not coming back just like Dennis. Except this time, you're the one letting it. I didn't answer. I made her coffee. I changed the subject. But that night, alone in the row house with the drip and the quiet, I opened the blue box and counted the cards. 140-something. I didn't finish counting. I didn't need to. I already knew the number was too high, and the balance was too low. I just didn't know what to do about it yet. Thanksgiving at Chad's house was a production. Not a meal, a production. Chad handled it the way he handled everything. Loudly, with a seating chart he printed from his laptop, and with the absolute certainty that he was the most important person In any room he entered, 22 people, extended family, neighbors, a co-worker from the dealership Chad kept calling my guy. Amanda had been cooking since Tuesday. I brought 2 pies, pecan and sweet potato, and a casserole dish of green bean bake that I'd been making the same way since Amanda was in middle school. Chad took the pies without looking at me and handed them to his sister. Put these with the others, like I'd delivered a package. The seating chart was taped to the dining room wall. I found my name at the bottom, far end of the table, between Sophie and Max, the kids' section. Chad's parents, who contributed nothing to this dinner except their appetite, sat at his right, his sister and her husband across from them. Amanda next to Chad where she always was, close enough to refill his wine, close enough to laugh at his jokes, close enough to pretend everything was fine. Sophie tugged my sleeve as I pulled out my chair. "Grandma, why are you sitting with us?" "Apparently I got demoted, sweetheart." She didn't understand. She just liked having me close. She scooted her chair until it touched mine. Chad carved the turkey. He did it standing, which is a choice that tells you everything you need to know about a man. Some people carve sitting down because it's a meal, and some people carve standing up because it's a performance. Chad carved standing up. Then he raised his glass. "I just want to say this year has been incredible. Amanda and I have built something really special here. This house, this family, this life. I look around this table and I see everything I've worked for." He worked for it. Interesting verb. My IRS brain, the part that never fully retires, the part that reads tax returns, the way musicians read sheet music, did the math automatically. The mortgage on this house, mine. The new patio where his father was currently smoking a cigar, paid for by a transfer in March. The braces Max would need next year, already a line item in my budget. The turkey was probably the one thing on this table Chad actually purchased, and even that was on sale at Giant Eagle because Amanda had clipped the coupon. I didn't say any of this. I ate my green beans and cut Sophie's turkey into rectangles. Chad's sister Tara, blonde highlights, talked with her hands leaned across the table at one point and asked me, "So, Mrs. Stratton, what do you do with your time these days?" Before I could open my mouth, Chad answered for me. "Oh, Mom Stratton's retired. She keeps busy." He said it the way you'd describe a shelf. Functional, uninteresting. Then he pivoted back to Tara's husband to talk about fantasy football. 31 years at the Internal Revenue Service. 2 commendations. A case that made the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette in 2011. Reduced to keeps busy. Sophie ate her turkey rectangles. Max didn't look at me. Amanda refilled Chad's glass. After dinner, I was in the kitchen washing dishes. I was always in the kitchen washing dishes. Not because anyone asked, because nobody thought to tell me to stop. Guests don't wash dishes. Family does. But I wasn't seated with the family, was I? I was at the kids' table, somewhere between guest and furniture. Amanda came in, pulled the door halfway shut behind her, her signal for private conversations. "Mom," whispered. "I'm sorry about the seating. It's fine." "It's not fine." "I know it's not." I kept washing, let the water run. Didn't look at her, because if I looked at her, I'd say things I'd been packing into filing cards instead of sentences for 7 years. She stood there. I could hear her breathing change, words stacking up behind the teeth, pressing, almost ready. "Mom, I need to tell you." "Babe," Chad's voice from the living room, loud enough to cut glass. "Bring the pie." Amanda's mouth closed. Whatever was behind her teeth went back down. She picked up the pecan pie, my pie, the one I baked at 5 in the morning, and walked out of the kitchen without another word. I stood at the sink, hands in soapy water. The window above the sink showed my reflection, blurred and wet, and behind it the dark backyard where Chad's father was still smoking that cigar on my patio. She was going to say it. I saw the shape of it, the breath, the lean forward, the way her eyes got glassy, the way they do right before she's honest. But Chad called, and Amanda chose the pie. She always chose the pie. I dried my hands, walked back into the dining room, Sophie was waiting for me with something behind her back. Grandma, I made this at school. For the Thankful Project. She held it out with both hands, the way children present things they believe are priceless. A drawing. Crayon on construction paper. 5 stick figures standing in a row in front of a house. Daddy was the tallest, big arms, triangle body. Mommy had yellow hair. Max had a baseball cap. Sophie drew herself with a giant bow, and in the middle, the very center, was Grandma. She was the only one with glasses. She had the biggest smile, and on her chest, Sophie had drawn a heart. Not a small heart, the kind that takes up the whole torso, red crayon pressed hard enough to leave a dent in the paper. That's you, Sophie said. You're in the middle because you're the most important. I held that drawing, and something inside my chest moved not up, not down, just sideways, like a door shifting on a hinge that had been painted shut for years. It's beautiful, Soph. Where should we put it? The fridge, so everyone sees. We taped it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a candy cane. Chad walked past on his way to get a beer. He didn't look at it. In Sophie's world, I was the center. In Chad's world, I was the kids' table. I drove home that night with the radio off. The streets were empty, everyone was inside, full and warm and arguing about leftovers. I didn't turn on music because I needed the quiet to count. 7 years of transfers. 158 cards in the box. The number of times Amanda had almost said the truth out loud and didn't. That last number I'd lost track of. It was higher than the others, and it was the only one still growing. For the record, I was not okay, but I wasn't ready yet either. Not quite. Have you ever sat at a table you paid for, in a chair you bought, eating food from a kitchen you keep running, and felt like a guest in someone else's house? Because that was Thanksgiving at my daughter's. And it wasn't even the worst dinner I'd attend there. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I bought Sophie a birthday present, a set of watercolor paints, the good kind, not the plastic trays from the dollar store. Sophie turned 5 on a Saturday, but the party wasn't until Sunday, so I drove over Friday afternoon to drop the gift off early. Amanda and I had talked about it. Just leave it on the kitchen table, Mom. I'll wrap it. I had a key. Amanda gave it to me 3 years ago, back when I was watching the kids 2 afternoons a week so she could save on daycare. I still watched them sometimes. I still had the key. I let myself in through the side door, the one that opens into the mudroom where Chad keeps his golf clubs he's used twice and his gym bag he's never used. The house was quiet in the front, but the kitchen wasn't. Amanda was on the phone. Speaker off, but her voice carried bright, polished, the performing voice she used with people she wanted to impress. I stopped in the hallway, not because I meant to eavesdrop, because my body stopped before my brain caught up. My mum? Amanda laughed. The easy kind. Oh God, no. She's on a fixed income, you know how it is. She doesn't really help us with anything. Chad handles all of it. He's honestly so good at what he does. We're lucky. My hand was still on the gift bag. The tissue paper crinkled when my fingers tightened, and for a second I thought she'd hear me, but she kept talking. Yeah. No, he's killing it at the dealership. We're looking at maybe doing a renovation next spring. I set the gift on the hallway table. Quietly, carefully. My arms had been shaking, and I hadn't noticed until I put it down. I walked back out the side door, got in my car, sat there. $4,237 a month. That's what doesn't really help with anything looks like. 7 years. 160-some cards in a blue box in my closet. An $11,000 roof I couldn't fix. A trip to Savannah I never took. A 2009 Civic with a window that didn't close. She doesn't really help us with anything. I want to tell you I was angry. That would be simpler. Anger has a direction it moves. It pushes. It breaks things and then you clean up. But what I was sitting in wasn't anger. It was something without a name. The closest I can get is this. Imagine you wrote a book. Every chapter, every page. Stayed up late, bled into it, gave it everything, and then someone else put their name on the cover and went on tour. And when a reporter asked about you, they said, "Who?" That's what it was. Not rage. Erasure. I had been written out of the story my money was paying to publish. I drove home. 16 minutes. No radio. No crying. My IRS brain doesn't cry. It audits. Here is what the audit found. Amanda tells Chad. Mom's on a fixed income. She can't really help. This keeps Chad from asking questions. It keeps his pride intact. It keeps the household running on a lie he's comfortable with. Amanda tells me, don't tell Chad about the transfers. It'll hurt his pride. Please, Mom, this keeps me silent. It keeps the money flowing. It keeps me locked in a closet where nobody can see me or what I carry. Amanda tells her friends, my mum doesn't help us with anything. Chad provides everything. This protects the image, the good husband, the good life, the narrative where Amanda married well and didn't need her mother. 3 audiences, 3 different stories, none of them true. I've spent my career inside other people's finances. I know what it looks like when someone maintains separate books, when the version they show the bank doesn't match the version they show the IRS, doesn't match the version they keep in a drawer. In my professional life, we had a word for that. Fraude. My daughter had been filing false returns on every side for 7 years, and I had been co-signing them. That night I sat in my row house and opened the blue box. I didn't count the cards this time. I didn't need to. I picked up the first one, June 2017, the wedding, and the most recent one, last month's daycare, and held them side by side, 8 years apart. Same handwriting, same box, same woman sitting alone at a kitchen table, doing the bookkeeping for a life that didn't include her. I put the cards down and looked at my hands. These hands filed returns for 28 years. These hands caught a man in Allegheny County who'd been running a shell company through his dead brother's social security number. These hands were good at finding the truth. But here's what they don't teach you at the IRS. Sometimes the auditor is the fraud. I didn't just fund Chad's ego. I funded Amanda's lie. Every transfer gave her permission to keep performing the grateful wife, the independent family, the mother who didn't need her own mother. I handed her the script and paid for the stage. And before Amanda, before Chad, before any of this, I funded my own silence. 24 years of paying instead of speaking. Because speaking meant risking the one thing I'd sworn I'd never do, lose her. The way Dennis was lost. The way the house went quiet that Wednesday in 2001 and never got loud again. I closed the box, set it on the shelf. My hands were steady, steadier than they'd been in months. Not because I'd made a decision, not yet, but because something had shifted inside the audit. The discrepancy was no longer between Bev and Chad, or Bev and Amanda. The discrepancy was between who I'd been and who I was willing to keep being. I didn't know when I'd act, but I knew the books didn't balance. They hadn't for 7 years. And a woman who spent her life closing audits doesn't leave one open forever. I turned off the kitchen light. The drip from the ceiling hit the bucket in the hallway, steady, patient, going nowhere, just like me. Except I wasn't patient anymore. I was just waiting for the right line item to push me over. It came 3 weeks later, on a Thursday, at a dinner table, from a man who told me to stay quiet. 3 weeks after I heard my daughter erase me from her own story, she called and invited me to dinner. Chad closed a big deal, Amanda said. He's in a great mood. I thought it'd be nice if you came. Thursday? A great mood, as if I should time my visits to his emotional weather. What time? 6:30. I almost said no. I'd been saying no to a lot of things lately, not out loud, but inside, the way you close a tab on your computer without saving. I hadn't called Amanda since the overheard phone call. She hadn't noticed, or she had, and chose not to mention it. With Amanda, it was getting harder to tell the difference, but I said yes. Because I had a plan. Thursday afternoon, I packed my purse, wallet, phone, reading glasses, and the blue box. Plan A was simple. I'd wait until after dinner. After Chad was full and satisfied and performing for nobody in particular, I'd pull Amanda into the kitchen where she almost told me the truth at Thanksgiving, and chose the pie instead, and I'd set the box on the counter. 173 cards, 7 years, every amount, every date, every quote. I'd say, "This ends tonight. Either you tell him, or I do." That was plan A. Reasonable, measured. The kind of thing an auditor does before issuing findings. You give the taxpayer a chance to self-correct. I drove to their house, parked behind Chad's SUV, the bumper sticker, self-made. It caught the streetlight and held it, proud as a badge. Self-made, with 14 lines of someone else's money. The pot roast was on the table when I walked in. Good plates again. Sophie ran to me, arms out, full collision hug, the kind that almost knocks you backward and is worth every bruise. Max waved from his seat, didn't get up, didn't look long. Amanda met me at the door, and her eyes dropped to my purse. She didn't say anything, but there it was, a flicker, fast as a blink. She knew the purse was bigger than usual. Amanda had spent 7 years calibrating what I carried and what I didn't, and a mother carrying more than her wallet to a Thursday dinner registered somewhere behind her eyes. She touched my arm. "Thanks for coming, Mom." Of course. Chad was in the dining room, already talking. He'd sold 3 trucks to a construction outfit in Cranberry Township, and from the way he told it, you'd think he'd single-handedly paved the Pennsylvania Turnpike. His hands moved in wide arcs. His voice filled the room, the way expanding foam fills a crack, every gap, every silence, sealed shut. He started talking about financial planning, looking ahead, building wealth. "We should sit down with a guy I know," he told Amanda. "Start really thinking long-term." Long-term. The man whose long-term financial plan was my checking account wanted to talk about building wealth. I was cutting Sophie's chicken rectangles, white meat only, and the words came out before I decided to let them. "You might want to check your cash flow first." Quiet, almost under my breath. But Chad heard it. The room heard it. Amanda heard it. And her hand tightened on her wine glass. Chad turned. The smile came first, automatic, the kind salesmen keep loaded. "Grandma. Adults are talking. Stay quiet." Sophie's fork stopped. Max sat very still. The co-worker Chad had invited some guy named Pete from the service department, studied his green beans with great interest. I looked at Amanda. She opened her mouth. I waited. Thanksgiving kitchen. The phone call. Now this. 3 chances. 3 doorways she could walk through. She closed her mouth. Our eyes held. 3 seconds. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was counting not numbers this time, but the distance between who my daughter was and who she'd decided to become. 3 seconds is a long time when you're measuring that. Amanda dropped her gaze to her plate. That's when Plan A died. Not because of Chad, because of her. I could have fought Chad. I'd fought worse. But I couldn't fight someone who wouldn't even stand up. "Okay, Chad." I set down the knife, wiped my hands on the napkin, pushed back the chair, walked upstairs with my purse, the one Amanda had noticed, the one with the blue box she'd never see tonight. Guest bedroom. The quilt I made. The lavender plug-in. I sat on the edge of the bed and took out my phone. The banking app opened in 2 taps. 14 transfers listed in clean rows. Each one a line I'd drawn between my account and my daughter's life. Each one invisible to the man downstairs who was currently explaining to Pete that success was all about discipline. I didn't think about it the way people think you think about it. There was no dramatic pause, no trembling finger over the button. 28 years at the IRS teaches you that the biggest decisions happen in the smallest motions. A signature, a box checked, a number entered. I cancelled the first transfer. Confirm. Second. Confirm. By the 5th, the sound downstairs had shifted. Someone had put on music, the kind Chad liked. Classic rock too loud for a dining room. It covered the sound of nothing, which is what I was doing. Nothing. Just pressing buttons. Just stopping. By the 10th, my breathing had gone even. The same rhythm it used to take during a long audit. Steady, mechanical, the body running on procedure while the mind holds still. 14. Confirm. Done. The screen blinked once, then settled, like a ledger after the last entry. I put the phone down. The blue box sat in my purse, unopened. 173 cards that nobody would read tonight. Plan A was dead. Plan B was 14 taps on a screen. Quieter, cleaner, and permanent. Downstairs, Chad laughed. The big laugh, the one that seals a room. Nobody came upstairs. Nobody knocked. Nobody texted. The guest bedroom sat in its lavender silence, and I sat in mine, and the distance between me and my daughter was exactly 1 flight of stairs and 7 years of lies. I thought about Dennis, how he left a note on the counter and vanished, how Amanda stood in the doorway in her school uniform and asked if we were going to be okay, how I swore I would never be the one who left, but I just left, didn't I? Not through a door, through an app. 14 taps and I walked out of their financial life the way Dennis walked out of ours without saying goodbye. The thought sat on my chest like a stone. Then I picked it up and looked at it, the way I look at everything closely, with numbers. Dennis left without a word, without a reason, without a record. I left a record, 173 records, and a reason on every single one. That's the difference. It has to be. I picked up my purse, walked downstairs. The dining room was clearing plates stacked, Pete putting on his jacket, Amanda loading the dishwasher. I walked to Sophie, kissed her forehead. She smelled like crayon and pot roast. "Night, Grandma," she mumbled, already half asleep on the couch. I walked past Chad. He didn't look up. He was showing Pete something on his phone, probably the LinkedIn post he'd draft later. I walked past Amanda. She looked up. Her eyes had something in them I hadn't seen before, not guilt, not sadness, fear. Because she'd seen the purse. She'd seen my face when I went upstairs. And my daughter, who had spent 7 years reading me the way a card player reads a tell, knew something had changed. She just didn't know what yet. I drove home. Row house dark. Bucket in the hallway catching the drip. Phone on the counter, silent. No messages. No calls. The quiet was enormous. But for the first time in 7 years, it belonged to me. The first thing to bounce was the daycare. Friday morning, 9:17 a.m. I know the time, because Amanda's text arrived while I was pouring my second coffee, which is the only ritual I have left that costs me nothing. "Mom, did something happen with the transfer?" "Sophie's daycare says payment declined." I set my coffee down, typed 3 words. For the record, I filed an amendment. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "What does that mean?" I didn't reply. I picked my coffee back up and drank it in the quiet kitchen, with the dripping ceiling and the $11,000 roof I could suddenly afford to think about. Daycare billed weekly. That's why it went first. Car insurance was bi-weekly, that would be next. Mortgage was monthly, due on the first. Amanda had until November to feel that one. But the car loan, the utilities gap, Max's after-school program, those would fall somewhere in between. Each one a small earthquake in a house built on ground nobody knew was borrowed. Saturday. The car insurance lapse notice arrived in Amanda's mailbox. I know this because Amanda called me, not texted. Called, and her voice had the specific pitch it gets when she's trying to sound calm and failing. "Mom, the car insurance lapsed. Did you cancel something?" "I cancelled 14 somethings, Amanda." Silence. The long kind. The kind that has furniture in it you can almost hear her sitting down. "Mom, you can't. He's going to what? Notice? Good. He should have noticed 7 years ago." She hung up. I stared at the phone for a while. Then I made lunch. By Saturday evening, Chad had called the bank. I want you to picture this, because it's important, and because for the record it was the first time in this entire story that I laughed. Chad Pruitt, self-made man, called his bank to report an error on his car loan payment. The loan that had been paid every month like clockwork for 5 years. The payment that came from a transfer from an account he didn't know existed, funded by a woman he'd told to stay quiet. The bank told him, "No error on our end, sir." He called again. Different department. Same answer. He called a third time. I know this because Amanda told me later, and even through her panic, I could hear the specific exhaustion of a woman who has watched a man do the same thing 3 times and expect different results. There must be some kind of glitch, Chad told the third representative. I always pay on time. You always pay on time. Interesting sentence, Chad. Interesting verb, pay. You might want to check who was conjugating it. Sunday, the car loan bounced. Chad's credit score would take its first hit Monday morning, and it would not be the last. He'd learn that credit scores, like reputations, take years to build and 15 days to damage. And on Sunday evening, because the universe has a sense of timing that even the IRS can't match, Chad posted on LinkedIn. I want to read it to you exactly as he wrote it, because I saved a screenshot the way I save everything carefully, dated, filed. Real leaders navigate challenges with grace. Setbacks don't define us, our response does. Grateful for the grind. Number hustle, number grind. Never stops, number built, not given. Built, not given. He typed that with his thumbs while sitting in the driveway of a house whose mortgage was 48 hours from bouncing, in a car whose loan just failed, wearing a watch he'd bought on credit from a man who thought grace was something you said before a meal you didn't pay for. I laughed. Alone in my row house, reading that post on my phone, I laughed until my ribs hurt. Not a kind laugh, the other kind. The kind that comes when the distance between what someone believes about themselves and what is actually true becomes so wide you could park a leased SUV in the gap. Amanda didn't call Sunday. She was handling it or not handling it, which was the same thing with different lighting. I knew what she was doing, sitting in the math, trying to make it make sense without revealing the variables she'd hidden for 7 years. Her dilemma was beautiful in its symmetry. Tell Chad the truth that his mother-in-law had been funding their life since their wedding day and watch 7 years of lies collapse in his face, or pretend she didn't know why the bills were bouncing and watch the same thing collapse in slow motion. She chose the slow motion because Amanda always chose the version that bought her more time. It was the one thing about her I could predict with the accuracy of a federal audit. Monday came. Tuesday. The after-school program sent a notice. The utility company sent a warning. Chad made phone calls with a voice that got louder each day because volume was the only tool he had. And when your only tool is volume, every problem sounds like it needs to be shouted at. I didn't call Amanda. She didn't call me. The silence between us was the loudest thing in my life, and I have a ceiling that drips. Wednesday night, I was reading in the living room one of those paperback mysteries Hattie lends me, the ones with recipes in the back, when my phone rang. Not Amanda. Max. His voice was small. Not scared exactly, but compressed, like someone had taken a normal 8-year-old voice and folded it into a space it didn't fit. Grandma? Hey baby, what's up? Dad's really upset. He keeps yelling at Mom. They're in their room with the door closed, but I can hear them. My hand tightened on the phone. I closed the book without marking the page. Mom's crying, Grandma. Max, where's Sophie? Asleep. She doesn't know. I'm in my room, 8 years old, in his root syndrome, alone, listening to his parents fight about money he didn't understand, through a door nobody thought to soundproof. I knew this scene. I knew the doorway. I knew the school uniform, and the empty kitchen, and the question that was coming before he said it. Grandma. Are we going to be okay? The air left my lungs. Not fast, slow, like something deflating, because that sentence doesn't belong to Max. It belongs to a 9-year-old girl in 2001, standing in a kitchen doorway with her backpack still on, asking the same question in the same small voice. And the woman on the other end of that question had spent 24 years making sure the answer was yes. And now the woman on this end had made the answer uncertain. Max, listen to me. My voice was steady. My hands were not. You are going to be okay. No matter what happens between the grown-ups, you are going to be okay. I promise. Like you promised, Mom? I closed my eyes. Yes, baby. Exactly like I promised your mom. He hung up. I sat in the chair with the phone in my lap and the book on the floor and the drip in the hallway, counting seconds I didn't want to count. My thumb hovered over the banking app. I could restore them. Every transfer, one by one, the way I'd cancelled them. Put the floor back under their feet. Put the ceiling back over Max's head. Go back to being invisible, because at least invisible people don't cause earthquakes. I didn't open the app, but I didn't put the phone down either. I sat there, holding it, the way you hold something that could save you or ruin you depending on which button you press. For the first time since Thursday, I cried. Not because I regretted it, because some promises cost everything, and I couldn't tell yet which promise I was breaking, the one I made to Amanda 24 years ago, or the one I'd finally made to myself. 10 days after the dinner, Tuesday evening, I was reheating soup, the canned kind, tomato, the one I'd been eating 3 nights a week for 2 years, because the grocery budget I actually lived on didn't include fresh produce and a second household. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Hattie always called first. Amanda hadn't spoken to me since Saturday. The mailman came in the morning. I opened the door. Chad Pruitt stood on my porch in jeans and a wrinkled button-down. No blazer, no watch the wrist where it used to be, had a pale tan line, like a ghost of something that used to live there. His hair was uncombed. His eyes were red around the edges in a way that had nothing to do with allergies. Beverly. First time. In 7 years, he had never once used my name. It was always Grandma, which isn't a name, it's a category, or Mom Stratton, which is a label, not a person. But tonight, standing on a porch he didn't know I'd paid to repaint 4 years ago, he said my actual name. We need to talk. Come in. He walked into my row house the way people walk into buildings they've never entered. Looking at things, the narrow hallway, the framed photos, the bucket catching the drip from the ceiling. The drip I could have fixed if his car insurance hadn't been my priority every month for 5 years. I made coffee, not because he deserved it, but because I needed something to do with my hands, and because the IRS taught me that people talk more when they're holding something warm. He stood in my kitchen and paced. 2 steps one way, 2 steps back. The kitchen was too small for him. Everything about Chad was too big for this row house. His voice, his gestures, his certainty. Except tonight, the certainty was gone. He was just a man in a small kitchen with bad lighting, trying to find the beginning of a sentence. Amanda told me. He stopped pacing, faced me. About the transfers. All of them. I set his mug on the table. Set mine next to it. Sat down. When? I asked. Last night. After the kids went to bed. She showed me the bank statements. He rubbed the back of his neck. 7 years, Beverly. Why didn't anyone tell me? I let the question sit. In my career, I learned that the most important thing you can do after someone asks a question is nothing. Let the silence work. People fill silence with truth when they run out of performance. I didn't hide it, Chad. I helped. Every month, when Amanda called and said you had a slow quarter, or the insurance was short, or Max needed something, I helped. The question you should be asking isn't why I didn't tell you. It's why your wife told you I didn't. He stared at me. You don't know, do you? I took a sip of coffee. What she told her friends. What she told you. Amanda didn't just hide the transfers. She told you I was on a fixed income and couldn't help. She told her friends I never contributed anything. She told me not to say a word, because it would hurt your pride. 3 stories, Chad. 3 audiences. None of them true. He sat down. Not fast, not slow. The way a building settles when something structural has shifted underneath. I reached under the table. I'd moved the box from the closet that morning. Not because I knew he was coming, but because I was tired of it being in the dark, and placed it between us. Pale blue, recipe card sized, the kind you buy for a quarter at a church rummage sale. It didn't look like much, but it was the heaviest thing in the room. 173 cards, I said. 1 for every transfer, date, amount, and one thing someone said to me that week. I opened the box, took out a card. The 8th of September 2021. $450. Max's school registration and supplies. I turned it over. That week, Chad told me I wouldn't understand his investment strategy. I set it on the table. Took another. The 22nd of December 2022. $1,800. Christmas gifts for the kids, groceries, utility bill. Turned it over. That week, Chad told Amanda, "Your mother should contribute something for once." Another. The 3rd of March 2024. $1,200. Mortgage shortfall and Sophie's ear infection. Turned it over. That week, Chad posted on LinkedIn, "Blessed to provide for my family. Hustle never stops." I placed each card face up on the table, one next to the other, a grid of quiet facts assembling themselves into a story that didn't need narration. Chad watched each one land. His jaw moved once, a small clench then went still. I picked up the last card. No dollar amount, just a date and a sentence. The 10th of October 2025. "Grandma, adults are talking. Stay quiet." I set it at the end of the row. The kitchen was silent. Not empty silent. The kind that presses against walls. Chad looked at the cards, then at me. His hands were flat on the table, same position as at his own dinner table, but the posture was different now. Not commanding, bracing. "I didn't know," he said. Quiet, almost a whisper. "Bev, I swear, I didn't." "I know you didn't." I kept my voice level. "And that's the part I can't put on a card, Chad, because that part is mine." I took a breath. "Not for drama, for accuracy. I didn't just fund your ego. I funded Amanda's lie. Every transfer I made gave her permission to keep pretending the independent wife, the self-made family, the daughter who didn't need her mother. I handed her the script and paid for the stage. I paused, and before Amanda, I funded my own silence. 24 years of paying instead of speaking. Because speaking meant risking the one thing I swore I'd never do, lose my daughter the way I lost her father. Chad didn't move. "You built your identity on being the provider." But the provider was sitting at the kids' table. And me, I built my identity on being needed. We were both running frauds, Chad. The difference is, I kept the receipts. He looked at the cards again. 173 pieces of pale blue paper on a table in a row house in Pittsburgh, and each one carried more weight than anything he'd ever posted on LinkedIn. "I'm not asking you to apologize right now," I said. "I'm asking you to sit with what these cards say. Not about me, about who you are when nobody's paying the bills." The front door opened. Neither of us had heard a car pull up. Amanda. Sophie half asleep on her hip. Max beside her, backpack on. She'd picked them up from somewhere, not knowing Chad was here. Max saw the cards first. His eyes went to the table the way his eyes used to go to my coin jar, reading, counting, processing. He walked over, picked up a card. "Read it slowly, the way 8-year-olds read things that have too many numbers and not enough pictures." "Grandma." He looked up at me. "You paid for my school?" "Every year, sweetheart." But Dad said he stopped. Looked at Chad, looked at me, looked at the card in his hand. His mouth worked around a thought that was too big for it. "Everything counts, Max," I said. "Remember?" He put the card down on the table gently. "The way you set down something you now understand is important," and walked to me. His arms went around my waist. He pressed his face against my side and held on with the grip of a boy who was rearranging everything he knew about his family in real time. Sophie wiggled off Amanda's hip, saw Max hugging me, and toddled over. She wrapped herself around my leg. She didn't know what was happening. She just knew her brother was holding Grandma, and that was enough. I looked at Amanda, standing in the doorway of my kitchen. My daughter, 33 years old, looking at the box, the cards, the table full of evidence she'd spent 7 years making sure nobody would ever see. She was crying. Not the crying she did on the phone when she needed money practiced, efficient, designed to activate my guilt. This was the other kind. The kind that comes when you see the full accounting of what your silence cost, spread out in your mother's handwriting on recipe cards from the drugstore. I held my grandchildren. I looked at my daughter. I looked at Chad, sitting among 173 small truths. The audit was open. Everything was on the table. And for the first time in 7 years, the books were honest. 3 weeks passed. The row house was quiet, but a different kind of quiet than before. Not the silence of a woman waiting for the phone to ring, but the silence of a woman who had stopped answering it. I called a roofer. His name was Ed. He had a mustache like a push broom, and he gave me a quote for $6,800. I didn't blink. I didn't calculate which of Amanda's bills I'd need to skip. I just said, "When can you start?" He started the following Monday. First time in 3 years my ceiling didn't drip. The banking app was still on my phone. 14 lines, each one reading cancelled in small grey letters. $4,237, sitting in my account for the first time in 7 years. The space where that money used to leave every month was like a room after the furniture's been moved out. Empty, but possible. Amanda called twice. Short calls, careful, measured, the voice of a woman walking across ice she isn't sure will hold. The first call. "Mom, I just wanted to hear your voice." I gave her 3 minutes. The second call. "We're starting couples counseling next week." Chad agreed. I gave her 5. Neither call asked for money. That was new. Chad hadn't called. I didn't expect him to. Some men process things the way buildings process earthquakes. They settle, they crack, and you don't know what's still standing until the dust clears. On a Saturday morning late October, leaves going copper and gold on the hill behind my street, the doorbell rang. Amanda. Alone. No kids, no Chad, no performance. She was holding a grocery bag from the Giant Eagle on Murray Avenue, and when I opened the door she held it up like an offering. "I brought those sesame bagels you like, from the bakery section. They only had 4 left, so I got all of them." I looked at my daughter, 33 years old, standing on my porch with a bag of bagels and the face of someone who's been rehearsing a speech in the car for 20 minutes. "Come in." We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Chad had sat among 173 filing cards 3 weeks ago. I made coffee 2 mugs, the ones Hattie gave me from a craft fair, the ones that say IRS. I'm really sarcastic. Amanda wrapped her hands around hers, same grip she used on hot chocolate mugs at 10 years old, when the furnace broke and I told her we were camping indoors. "We had our first session," she said. "The counselor asked us to each write down what we thought the other person contributed to the household. Chad's list for himself was 2 pages. She almost smiled. His list for me was half a page. And then the counselor asked him what he thought other people contributed: parents, extended family. He wrote N.A. She set down her mug. "I told him everything, Mom. Not just the transfers. Everything. What I told my friends. What I told him about you. What I told you about him. All 3 versions." She paused. The counselor called it triangulation. I called it surviving. She said that's a word people use when they mean lying but don't want to feel bad about it. Smart counselor. Amanda looked at me straight. Not the sideways glance she gave me at Thanksgiving. Not the dropped gaze at the dinner table. Straight. "Mom, I need to say something I should have said 7 years ago, maybe longer." She set down her coffee. "Thank you for every card in that box, for every payment, for every time you answered the phone when I called crying. And I'm sorry, not for asking, for hiding it, for telling Chad you don't help, for telling my friends you don't help, for sitting at that table while he told you to stay quiet and choosing the pie instead of choosing you." She chose the pie. She remembered. Or maybe she'd always known. "The filing wasn't perfect, baby," I said. "But it was creative." She almost laughed. The sound caught halfway, turned into something wet, and she wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her jacket. I let the moment settle. Then I leaned forward. "I love you, Amanda. I love those kids. I have loved all of you with my checking account for 7 years, and I would do it again if I thought it was the right thing. But it wasn't. It was the easy thing. For both of us. She nodded. So here's what happens next. I didn't read from a list. I didn't prepare bullet points. 28 years at the IRS taught me that the most important findings are the ones you can say looking someone in the eye without checking your notes. Chad apologizes to me. Not on the phone, not through you, to my face, in front of Sophie and Max. Because those kids need to see that a man can be wrong and still be their father. That's how boys learn to be men, and that's how girls learn what to expect from them. Amanda swallowed, nodded. You never lie about money again. Not to Chad, not to your friends, not to yourself. If you need help, you ask for it with your name and your voice. No more transfers nobody knows about. No more just this once. I'll help you if you need it, but the door stays open and the lights stay on. And the third thing? He calls me Beverly, or Bev, or even Mrs. Stratton if he needs the distance. But he does not call me Grandma the way you call a piece of furniture that came with the house. I have a name. I spent 61 years earning it. Amanda reached across the table. Her hand landed on mine, warm from the coffee mug, trembling slightly at the fingertips. And if he won't? Then you'll learn what I learned when your father left. You are enough without him, and I'll be right here. Just not writing checks. She squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. But my wallet stayed in my purse. And for the first time, that was exactly where it belonged. That afternoon I drove to Hattie's. Her kitchen smelled like lemon cake and old wood, the way it always did, and she poured coffee before I sat down, because Hattie Novak has never waited for anyone to ask for what they obviously needed. How'd it go? Filed the amended return. Pass or fail? Incomplete. But at least I stopped paying the filing fee. She laughed. I laughed. The kind of laugh that comes after something hard is finally over, or finally beginning, which sometimes sounds the same. My phone buzzed. A photo from Amanda. Max at his desk, homework spread in front of him, pencil in his hand, tongue poking out in concentration. Caption. He asked about you today. I smiled. Typed back. Tell him Grandma says hi. And for the record, everything still counts. I put the phone down, picked up my coffee. Through Hattie's kitchen window, the October light came in low and gold, the kind of light that doesn't try to fill a room, just touches what matters and leaves the rest alone. On my refrigerator at home, taped with a magnet shaped like a Steelers helmet that Hattie gave me for Christmas, there was a drawing, 5 stick figures in front of a house, Daddy the tallest, Mommy with yellow hair, Max in a baseball cap, Sophie with a bow, and in the middle, the one with glasses, and a heart that took up her whole chest, Grandma. The filing card box was in my closet. I hadn't opened it since that Tuesday. I wouldn't throw it away. It wasn't evidence anymore. It was history. 173 small moments of love and silence, and money spent trying to hold something together that only honesty could fix. And history, I've learned, is only useful if you stop repeating it. What does it mean to love someone without conditions? And what does it mean when the only condition you set is treat me like a person? If that's too much to ask, then maybe it was never love they wanted. Maybe it was just the money. But I'll tell you this. I'd rather be alone at my own table than invisible at someone else's. And my table is small, and the roof doesn't leak anymore, and there's always room for the people who know my name. For the record,